I'm going to share my slides real quick. And yes, it's going to look a little gruesome. And that's because this is actually a gruesome topic. This is something that has been killing a lot of human beings, and we need to understand this better. Let's just real quick, just a little bit of science. I promise not to do too much of this, but remember, there is a big difference between the virus itself and disease. And this is true of every kind of infection you can think of. Just because something gets in your body doesn't mean you're going to get sick. It really depends upon whether or not, once that virus gets in your body or whatever it is, whether it can get inside your cells and mess things up. And that's also why different people manifest different levels of disease. Some people can't handle it very well, others handle it fairly well. And so any given virus can produce different symptoms in different people and different animals. And we know that the SARS-2 virus, the CoV-2 virus, is one that also infects animals. And we've seen that as a problem in our world. I also want to point out to you something that's fairly important here about this virus. And that is, and this is sort of general science again, when you're so sick that you can't get out of bed, it's very unlikely that you'll spread it to other people. But if you have milder symptoms and you can walk about, or, and this is really bad for the SARS-2 virus, if you don't have any symptoms, you can share this horrible virus with other people and they can get really, really sick. In fact, there's some very interesting data that shows, compares the original SARS virus, which affected 8,096 people and ultimately only killed 744. That's a lot of people. I shouldn't say only, but it wasn't as contagious as the virus that we're dealing with now. Another coronavirus that we learned about in 2012 is even more deadly. And since it's so deadly, see, the percent of people killed is a lot higher, but the total number of deaths is a lot lower because of this idea that there's less transmission. And then we've got our virus now, which, because it's less virulent, it spreads very, very easily. And because it can kill, it does kill. And so what we're looking at right now, and I have no idea, do you guys see a green a line here? I don't know why that's there. It's not on my slides, so I apologize if it's messing things up. But I do want you to notice that we've, just from last month, so this date last month, we had 12 million fewer people than we do today. So we're now up to over 185 million cases in the world, and the number of deaths is absolutely staggering. And it continues to rise. If you look at the numbers, they continue to go up. So this thing, it's far from over. It really is. And here in the United States, we continue to see more cases and more deaths. And we're actually seeing a rise in those areas where there are fewer vaccinated individuals. It also affects children. We cannot ignore the fact that this virus can cause disease in children, albeit, thank goodness, a lot less than what we see in the adults. It's still a serious risk for children as well. And importantly, they may get that horrible multi-system inflammatory disease. And it really, really is very significant, especially for the color community, the Blacks and Hispanics, which have a much higher incidence of this problem in our children. So this is really, really important. How much virus gets into your system is really important in terms of whether you end up sick or not. Because if you get a low amount of virus entering in a unit time, then your body has the ability and the time to slowly take care of it. And it can clear that virus, and we can do fairly well. But if you get a large amount of virus in one little bit of time, then your chances of your body being able to handle it go down dramatically, and your chances of being severely ill go up, and your chances of dying also go up. So because of that, we've recommended a number of public health measures to try and reduce the risk. Before I get into some of those methods, I also want to point out what's been going on here in our community. This is data from my friends at the University of Miami, David Andrews in particular, and Lily Abo as well. And this is from last month, where we were seeing a very high incidence of what's now being called the Alpha variant, or that UK variant. But we were seeing other variants as well. By now, by this month, things have changed. By June already, so that was May, by June, the horrible Delta agent was about 30% of the cases in the United States. Today, it's 52% of the new cases are the Delta variant. And we know that the Delta variant can get around the immunity that people developed if they had COVID before. So this is a very, very serious new variant. And we're very worried about not only the Delta variant, which is a near and present danger, but also about the development of future variants if we continue to allow this thing to transmit from person to person. And that gets me back to these public health measures. And I want to make it very clear that no one thing that we can do is really enough when you're dealing with a virus this contagious. So each thing that we do provides some protection, but no matter what we do, including the vaccines, just like Swiss cheese, it's got holes. So that's why we've asked people to layer their protections and to think about their underlying conditions that might make them more susceptible to ending up in the hospital or dead. And if they have those conditions, even if they're vaccinated, as long as we have such a high incidence of this Delta variant, and that it's really still advisable if you're in an indoor place and it's poorly ventilated and it's crowded and there's people there that you don't know and you don't know their vaccine status, you should still be wearing a mask. So let's talk about vaccines. How do we even make vaccines? Well, we select a critical protein, a critical part of the virus that it desperately needs in order to be able to get into our cells. And that's the only thing that we show to our immune systems. And that's really important because when the normal virus gets into your body is very busy. All its immune system is very, very busy trying to deal with this nasty, nasty thing. And so we don't necessarily make the best immunity. But if you only expose the immune system to a critical part of the virus, then our immune system is not really confronted with something that's very dangerous. It just knows that it can take its sweet time to give us the best possible immunity. And you can think of that as the difference between if you find out that a hurricane is coming your way and you've got 1 hour to fix up everything in your house versus if you learn about the hurricane 2 weeks before and they actually sent you a whole kit on how to fix up your house and get it all ready just in case the storm comes and you took your time and you did it right. So that's the difference between your body confronting the wild virus and your body confronting a vaccine. It has time to make the best cells and have the best protection that we can offer without you getting sick from an infection. So our immune system will recognize that little protein as dangerous and it turns on that critical machinery to get rid of it. And then, of course, we develop very special cells because the immune system has time to do it correctly. It's able to produce special cells, B and T cells they're called, that become educated and they're ready to block that virus from getting inside your cells. So let's see, we had several different mechanisms of making vaccine that we developed originally in the United States and put a lot of money into with Operation Warp Speed. Not all of them turned out to work, but some of them did. And as we know, in the world, there's a whole bunch of different vaccines that people have been trying to make. In fact, right now, there's still another 105 that are under clinical evaluation somewhere in the world, and 184 more that are under preclinical phase. So we're still working on getting more and more vaccines for more and more people that have more and more conditions. And as of today, we have administered enough doses of vaccine to have fully vaccinated 158.3 million US citizens. But that's still only 47.7% of our population being fully vaccinated, and it's very uneven. There are states like Connecticut with an extremely excellent vaccine rate, well over 70%. Those communities have a significant amount of what we call herd immunity. But in other states, including Florida, we are not anywhere near herd immunity yet. And overall, if you look at the numbers, oops, there's an extra 8 there. My bad. I tried to do this very fast. So it's 78.86% of people over 65. That's the good news in Florida. So ignore the 5 here. I'm sorry. It's 78.86% of people over 65 are fully vaccinated. So that group is all right, but not great. And it's not great for a few reasons. Number one, the older you are, especially people over 70, the harder it is for their immune system to make the best quality B and T cells that we talked about. So that's a little bit of a problem. Here are some of the vaccines that are in use worldwide, and you've probably heard of some of these vaccines like Sinopharm and Sinovac from China, and this is sort of an imitation of that that's made in India. These are inactivated vaccines. These are the least well functioning, but they're better than nothing vaccines that are available today in the world. And we know that places that have vaccinated with these vaccines are still seeing a rise in cases because of the Delta agent. So that's very serious. In the United States, we're very blessed. We have the Pfizer vaccine, which is among the very best in the world, and the Moderna vaccine, also an excellent vaccine. And we also have the Janssen & Janssen, which is a good vaccine. It's much better than these vaccines here that we're talking about that are inactivated viruses. And so it's important also which vaccine you get. It is important in terms of your protection. For example, the things like Moderna and Pfizer, they're the ones that are 2-dose vaccines. We know that it even against the Delta agent, it still has good effectivity in most of the studies we do. Although in one study in Denmark and one study in Israel, somewhere between 64% of people seem to still be able to get symptoms from the Delta agent. So this Delta variant is really very significant, but it's still keeping you out of the hospital. Even against the Delta variant, people that have either the Moderna or Pfizer are protected against going into the hospital, severe disease, and death. And the J&J vaccine against the original strain was about 77% effective. It's kind of dropped down to about 60% against some of these variants. So that's another thing we have to worry about. So key points, all the COVID vaccines that are currently authorized in the United States are working. They'll keep you out of the hospital and they'll keep you from dying. The way you form immunity because of the vaccine is far, far better than the kind of immunity, and it's much more long-lived and long-lasting immunity than what you get from exposure to the virus, and you don't have the risk of ever being sick in any serious way, and not getting those long COVID symptoms that are a big, big problem as well. So that completes what I wanted to share with you today. And I'm open for questions.